What's going on, people, and welcome to Man Knows Football. You are here with Guni, and I am here with a very special guest making his debut on the channel. Mike, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, mate. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
It's good that we're able to get the intro right the second time. I messed up the first intro, I'm not going to lie to you. But people, you already know how it goes in Man Knows Football. We admit to our mistakes. It's an organic channel. It's nothing too prim and professional. You get me? It's two brothers that are having a good footballing conversations. We will be exchanging opinions. And today we are going to be talking about the importance of a defensive midfielder, a position that we have not addressed since a certain Nemanja Matic has left Chelsea Football Club. However, before we do get into the main content, I've got to ask you to do four things, people. And I think you know what that is. That is subscribe, like, leave a comment, and also smash the notification bell so you know when the videos are coming out. So, Mike, you have written a very, very informative article that I have linked down there in the description for the people to read. Clickable. I've done all the homework for you people, so don't be lazy. All you got to do is hit that description, click that button, and it's going to send you right there on one of my favorite platforms, Si and Dan Talk Chelsea. Simon is one of the nicest guys ever, and I'm referring to Simon Phillips, a very, very humble guy, very modest guy. I do speak to him off the camera as well, so it's good to hear that you're also writing for the guy. You know him better than I do. But your article here on defensive midfield, on the defensive midfielder, is absolutely incredible. It does highlight the importance of why we need that DM, and I strongly stand behind this article because I do believe, such as yourself, that we are not going to cross that ceiling until we do address this position. Now, this might be a silly question, but what inspired you to write this article?
So, I mean, it's something that I just feel really strongly about anyway. I mean, for years now, I've recognised the importance of it, not just with Chelsea, but for teams across football, top-level football. Or not even, doesn't even have to be top level. You can see the difference even in something like the Championship. The teams that are cut above the rest usually have that area of the pitch kind of sorted out. Teams in the Premier League that are essentially punching above their weight, the ones who are kind of best of the rest, they usually have that, on lockdown. And then also as well, obviously, like I kind of highlighted in the article or tried to point out, is that, Chelsea is an area that Chelsea have been lacking in for the best part of half a decade. And I think it's the real cause of a lot of our problems and a lot of bottlenecks that we seem to run into. And I guess it was also, born out of a bit of frustration as well, because I don't feel like there's enough, it's not highlighted enough in, general sort of like the media and stuff, or like Chelsea correspondents. They always want to talk, about strikers, defenders, but they seem to just sort of gloss over that, like it's kind of, doesn't really matter to a sense, and it's like, oh, Chelsea are fine, they've got numbers, but they don't really dig deep enough and look at the nuance of it. And I guess then Simon asked me, he said, because I speak to him about it all the time, and he knows how strongly I felt about it, and he said, are you up for writing an article? And it's an idea I was toying with for quite a long time, and I thought, you know what, I'll just do it. And then I ended up just writing it out, and I just kept going. And there you go. But I mean, you've heard me speak before. We've spoken lots of times before, and it's always the centre of, like, when we talk about Chelsea and this current Chelsea, the centrepiece of what I believe is a real root cause to a lot of our issues.
I have to agree. And we're going to take it back to a point in our history where, things started to take a turn for the better. And one of those signings that you've quite correctly alluded to is Claude Makelele. If you don't know who Claude Makelele is, it's either you're a very, very young person who watches football, or you have been living under a rock if you claim to watch football and don't know who Claude Makelele is. Literally, the Makelele role is that the position was named after him. So I remember at the time when we signed Claude Makelele, and because it was towards like the tail end of his career, there were people that were a bit skeptical about his signing, and particularly about his size and whether he's going to cut it in the Premier League. But quite like yourself, I feel like he was the signing that started to revolutionize things over at Chelsea Football Club. But just explain to the people why you think that is.
So I call these players in that position enablers. You can use lots of terms. Like I reference a lot of metaphors towards it, like the rhythm section in the band, or the base of the house that holds everything else, the wall that supports the roof. all of this stuff, the linchpin. But I think they enable everyone else to be better versions of themselves. And I'm a massive advocate of creativity, or the ultimate form of creativity, coming from the setup or the formation, the whole system itself, rather than an individual. Because I think individualism in football is too leaned upon by people when they talk, and individualism only goes so far. But these players, when you have it right and you have a real class player in there, someone who is at the top of their game, the better they are, the better the enablement. And, I used Chelsea as reference in the article, and this is where I think a lot of people got a little bit kind of, we're talking about 8 years ago or 10 years ago, football's changed. I didn't do it, but I could have easily referenced teams that use these players now. So Liverpool with Fabinho, Manchester City with Rodri. The perfect something. Rodri is an unbelievable player. In my opinion, he's one of the best players in the league. To me, he should have won the Player of the Year last year for me. He's absolutely incredible. But without these players, their team isn't the team that everyone thinks they are. A lot of people concentrate on your De Bruyne's, your Bernardo Silva's, or your Salah's, your Mane's, all of these guys. We go back to Chelsea past, like obviously Drogba, Robin, all of these guys, Lampard. But the unsung hero really is these players, the Makelele's, the Mikels, Matic, Fabinho's, Rodri's, all of these guys, Casemiro's. They hold everyone up. They are like the bodyguard. They provide the stage for the band to perform on. Without that there, you haven't really got a leg to sort of stand on, really. Like, I used Fabregas in the Matic example. The reason why I used it in the article was because it was the most recent one.
Yeah.
I could have spoke about Makelele for days, but a lot of people, maybe because of age, maybe didn't watch it, So I used that because it was our recent history. Now, I used Fabregas as the perfect example in there. Fabregas was only able to be Fabregas and do the amazing things that Fabregas did, like all those assists. Do you remember all those assists? He was only able to do that because of Matic. Fabregas is an incredible player, but he was enabled by Matic. You think of these players as one entity rather than an individual. It's not Fabregas. It's not just Matic. It's Matic and Fabregas. You think of Liverpool, it's not just Thiago, it's Thiago and Fabinho. There's a reason why they have that ridiculous record where they're not beaten when the two of them play together. It's like a perfect yin-yang.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was gonna say as well, there has been obviously recently at Chelsea, we have been looking at midfielders, and not quite that profile that we're looking at now. One thing that I've noticed is that we do seem to be getting bypassed a lot in that midfield, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's just down to the immobility of Jorginho," which is partially true, but it's just quite like you said, we don't have anybody to facilitate the talents of the midfielders that we currently have. Now, this isn't a knock to certain players on the team, like your Kovacic's, your Kante's, or whatever. I just feel that you're going to get their full potential when you do have that kind of player in behind them. But what I did want to say is that it's not just down to defending and being able to make a tackle in front of the defense, which is a huge misconception that I am seeing across, Twitter. Let's have it right. Twitter is only a small sample base of the fans. So I don't want to paint all the fans with the same brush because it's only a small sample size. However, I do feel like that role needs to be explained a little bit more to those that who don't understand, or those who think that they understand what that role is. Do you reckon you can help them sort of gain an understanding as to what a DM needs to have, what kind of bows they need to have to their strings they need to have to their bows? Sorry, I did this earlier and I got mixed up with that one, so I don't know why I even attempted to do it again. But go on, Mike.
So, defensively, obviously, like you mentioned, it's not just about that. The thing that they need to have first and foremost is they need to be able to read the game from a defensive standpoint, okay? If they're strong, athletic, they're quick, they're good in the tackle, they're adept in the tackle, being able to win aerial duels, especially for Chelsea, we don't win aerial duels in our midfield. That's a massive issue. I remember going to the Bridge last season and Saul was playing. It was the Southampton game, I think. I remember the one I'm talking about. And he was winning aerial duels. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But it was the most basic thing because we never see it. We never ever see it, you know. But it's weird because people look at that and then they think like, oh, okay, you're just talking about defensive stuff. But that stuff in itself, even by itself, it allows you to be more attacking. So a great example I'll use, because everyone watched, you know, most people have watched the Premier League, right? And it was the first game on TV, I think last Saturday, Fulham and Liverpool, right? Fulham were pressing really high and they were engaging higher up the pitch because Paulinho allowed them to do it. He was the one. It's like I'll give you an example as well, right? This is another thing. It's impossible to measure this by any sort of metric as well. Do you remember when Kepa was our goalkeeper before we had Mendy, like our number one? And there was loads of stories that were coming out, and you could see it with your own eyes that they didn't quite trust him.
Yeah.
They were shaky because they didn't trust what was behind them. When you have someone that you trust, and obviously I'm talking about now with the midfield and the Fulham example, you're enabled to engage and be more riskier with things that you do because you know that you have that fail-safe behind you.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I say Chelsea aren't a team right now that take high-risk, high-reward decisions in the final third, or players that do that. Now, you may say there's some that, you know, that can't really do it, maybe, but there's a lot of players who definitely can that don't because they know that if they lose the ball in certain situations, that middle is Swiss cheese. We are done out here. So everyone is almost like caged and shackled. Like you see it with other teams as well, right? Where even if they have that sort of player, if that player gets injured or gets taken off, you can see it in the way that the players are. They become a little bit more reserved and like, even that they don't even think about it. Everyone just sort of closes in a bit because they know that that middle is very vulnerable. And everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, but we have 3 defenders, so it's fine. But again, when you have it in the midfield, right, everyone is able to push up a little bit higher if needed to be because it's further forward. You know, it's not the last line of defense. It works both ways, you know. And like I said, another way I compare these players is, or what I liken them to, is like a battery. It's powering everything else, even by that little percentile. And you mentioned someone like Kovacic, yeah? Let's take him, for example. This sort of player would power Kovacic to a level that we probably aren't used to, or a level that we might see, but you will get it more consistently because he knows he has that fail-safe with him to allow him to concentrate more on his game. Right now, there's too much defensive responsibility on him than there should be. If Fabregas was in this team, to hark it back, he would be exactly the same. We would be using Fabregas as almost like the last line of our defense before we hit our defense. That's not good. That's not okay. Does that kind of make sense?
No, it does. It makes complete sense, 100%. Because, again, just going back to the example that you made about everything about trust, it's exactly like what you're saying about the goalkeeper. You can see your defenders are not going to perform to optimal level if they can't trust who's behind them. And we've had this conversation before, and quite similarly, if you as the defensive midfielder, or you're given that role to do that role on that part of the pitch, the players behind you have got to trust you, and the players ahead of you have got to trust you. So there's even more responsibility in that kind of respect than what you have in your defenders and your goalkeeper. Now, I'm not downplaying their role, but it's just quite like you said, that's the engine room of the whole team, in my honest opinion. And now, I was gonna say I had a really good point that I was just about to make, but for example, Ndidi over there at Leicester City, it's like you were saying, some teams, they go into their shells a bit, they become a little bit more reserved naturally because that player that they trust in that position is no longer there. They have an injury. And when you mentioned that, I just thought about Ndidi for Leicester. I think just back to how important that he was for that team, and just how he was able to facilitate your other midfielders to do their jobs. But at Chelsea, we haven't seemed to have that. Since, well, not even seen. We haven't had that since Nemanja Matic. We're relying on pivots like, Kante, Jorginho, Kante, Jorginho, Kovacic, Jorginho, whoever you want to put in there. And my thing is that when you're playing a Jorginho, who is obviously who's supposed to be the deeper lying midfielder, you have me, from what I see, I know that he is not a natural defensive mid at all. That role, he might occupy that space, but his role is different. And it's quite like you say, there's a difference between position and a role. They're two completely different things. Now with Jorginho, and a lot of my subscribers, they hear me talk about this guy a lot, and they think that I'm just saying it to pick on him. Absolutely not. It's just that the deficiencies that he has to play that position are way too glaring for me to ignore. That's the problem. And as a result of that, you are seeing your Reece James is not taking too many chances as much as he should, or your Chilwells, or sometimes you're seeing, in fact, most recently against Everton, you're seeing Koulibaly have to step forward so much to help that midfield because of the fear of being bypassed. Now, I had some of my subscribers say, oh, isn't that done by design or whatever? Because Rudiger used to do the same thing. Koulibaly's now doing the same thing. Yes, however, it should be a short-term solution. It should not be your go-to, because now when you're asking players to do things like that, I got to ask you, Mike, what happened to Koulibaly after a certain period of time where he kept on doing that? And
went down, didn't it?
Including the last-ditch tackles that he was making. No wonder he was getting cramp. You see what I'm saying? Kovacic, gone.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's fine to do that in principle, like you said about stepping out, and you can say it's by design. But I prefer this kind of stuff to be used more as a weapon rather than something that you have to rely on. When you rely on something like that, the margin for error is so small. And if you have such a small margin for error in the Premier League, you're not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable at all. And like you've seen it time and time again. Like luck will run out. The amount of 1v1s that we expose our defensive line to is not acceptable. We have to rely on our defense to play out of their skin in order to basically make sure that we don't lose a game or drop any points. And the law of average will tell you that, defenders or central defenders generally are tall, usually 6 foot or above, big guys. I know they can be quick, like we saw Rudiger be quick, Koulibaly's quick, but they're not small, well-balanced, low center of gravity type players. They are more to do with forward type players on the whole, right? I know you get big strikers, but you know what I mean, like wingers, attacking midfielders. If it's the law of average, if you expose a big guy, like a centre-back, to one of these smaller guys, enough times, they will get the better of them. It doesn't mean they're any worse players, but what you want to do is limit the amount of time that's happening.
Exactly.
You want to use these players as a weapon rather than having to over-rely on them. It's exactly the same in the attack. When you rely on one player to bail you out time and time again, that's relying on moments and individuality, and it will dry up. And you've seen it with Chelsea, and you can see it with other teams. I always hark back to Manchester United because everyone always goes about, we need a creative player to make us more creative. Yeah, maybe it'd be nice, but again, to rely on that is a joke. Like, when Manchester United bought Bruno Fernandes and he came in for the first 6 months, everyone was like, wow, this guy's amazing. He's unlocking defences. But guess what? Teams worked it out. They worked out how to get around him. Once they did that, the creativity completely dried up. Now look at them. You always hit a ceiling when you rely on individualism. That's the problem. You need to make sure the cogs in the machine fit well and they churn properly. Because I hark back again to the other stuff I always say. The problem with Chelsea, and it's been like this for the last 4 to 5 years, is that why we ask our opposition 1 or 2 questions, our rivals usually ask 5 or 6 questions. When the 1 or 2 questions get answered by the opposition, we run out of ideas and we rely on moments, penalties, corners, a free kick. You can't go through a 38 game league season with the aspirations that we have doing that. It doesn't work.
No, I've got to agree with you. And there are also some that think, why not throwing N'Golo Kante in that position? And again, I feel this is a myth that needs to be spelled out to some. He's not a DM. If you leave N'Golo Kante at the base of the midfield, which we saw under Frank Lampard, by the way, yeah, you see how we're just going to get completely opened up. Is that necessarily N'Golo Kante's fault? No, because his natural instinct, quite like you say, is to roam and to just break up attacks from anywhere on the pitch where he smells danger. or where he sees the ball. Now, I know in football, they tell you, stop chasing the ball, stop chasing it. But that's what N'Golo Kante does. That's what he's so good at. And he does it high up the pitch. It's great. But then at the same time, so often, how many times have we seen, even last season, how often did we see N'Golo Kante being the last man, being where the striker is? And you're like, what are you doing there, bro? Why are you the last man? Why are you one-on-one with the goalkeeper? What is going on here? But that's just N'Golo Kante and how it naturally plays. And I just want to go back to when Sarri was managing and how much stick he got for playing, because it was really him that emphasized it. He was really one that saying that, I want to play N'Golo Kante. I want him to be breaking up the play higher up on the pitch. He is not a defensive midfielder. Do you remember the backlash that he got for that?
Yeah.
For saying that?
I mean, to me, I don't want to ruin the flow here. I don't like what he essentially done with Kante to the extreme that he did it. Yeah. I think the best version of N'Golo Kante at Chelsea is when he was under Antonio Conte, because Kante, he is a double pivot player, but he's the other guy in the double pivot. He's just a different type of other guy.
Yeah.
So the same way Kovacic is a double pivot player, but he's the other guy, or Fabregas is a double pivot player, but he's the other guy. These guys aren't eights. They are middle third players with different purposes. So Kante, like you said, is like a heat-seeking missile. He'll go and he'll find the space to close it down in front of him and try and win the ball back higher up the pitch, right? He's not someone who's going to sit and cover the defensive half space in your own half. The problem I have with Kante at the moment, and I don't know why it happens, is I get frustrated that his starting position is too high. There's too many times where I see the goalkeeper kicking it, like Mendy kicking it, and his position is way too high. It's like up with the attacking players. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Because he needs to be a bit deeper, but he needs to make sure that he's not chained. He should be partnered with someone who is a quote-unquote defensive midfielder, the way he was under Matic. The great thing we had there in that season when we won the title, when we had him, when we first signed him, is we had Fabregas and him, and they would get switched out depending on the circumstance, maybe sometimes in game, because Fabregas and Kante, they had different keys, if you like, to the doors. So we have so many of these other guys, we just don't have the guy to put them with. The only guy that we have to put him with, like you said, is a guy that can't do the role that is required really in the Premier League. He needs to be facilitated. He's not the facilitator. He needs to be facilitated himself. And like I said in the article, and I know a lot of people don't like this, and obviously you get the kind of backlash and stuff, he's not worth the amount of facilitation that he requires.
I 100% agree with you, bruv. I 110% agree with you. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I just have to emphasize how much I agree with that statement. But go on.
Yeah, I mean, he's not, right? All of these guys that I'm mentioning, to a degree, have to be facilitated to a way. They add so much that you're allowed to facilitate them. So Kante being the uniqueness that he is, right? Kovacic, because of the obviously he's a good dribbler, but obviously I think he's a good passer as well. He has, he's shown he's someone you should facilitate. Fabregas, even to an extent, maybe even someone like Frank Lampard in the past, Ramirez. I know there's a lot of talk about Frankie de Jong. He's another one that you facilitate. But Jorginho isn't enough because he's in the position of a facilitator. And what he needs to offer you is that level of facilitation is someone who literally can run a game, essentially, right? But he can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not essentially his fault. It's just who he is. He was brought in by a very specific manager for a very specific role, a specific style of play that didn't really translate to the Premier League because we played the same way as we did against Huddersfield, as the same way as we did against Manchester City, and it just didn't work. It was like it was trying to be Serie A, but it's not Serie A. It's just the way it is. He's remained since said manager has left, and we've just sort of tried to sort of fit him in and sort of, with lack of a better term, hold his hand, essentially, right? And if you go through that level of hand-holding, you best make sure that you're one of our best players who is able to influence the game in such a way or elevate the system in such a way that we are free scoring, we're defensively solid. Do you know what I mean? But we're not.
Like a Pirlo or someone like that.
Yeah, or I liken Fabregas because he needed to be facilitated to a degree.
Yeah.
The strongest or the fastest, but he was so good that you allowed that to happen because of everything that he was able to offer you. He was able to speed up and slow down a game at will. And when a game became very fiery, and in the Premier League, like I said, there's so much different adversity and levels of it, this kind of like back against the wall sort of situations, he was able to deal with that.
Yeah.
Jorginho is such a linear footballer, right? Where he can play at one pace, and if it's comfortable for him, fine. But as soon as that goes out the window, he becomes a passenger, right? It's just truth. You saw it against Everton. You see it's sample size, right? He's been here for 4 years, and you've seen it so many times, so many different games, right? And I'm not even talking about the games against the likes of Liverpool or Arsenal. Arsenal always get the better of him, always target him. If you watch Arteta, he always targets him, always. But that aside, I'm talking about, Southampton's, West Brom's, West Ham's, all of these teams. When the adversity grows too much, he cannot handle it, and he becomes a passenger. In that area of the pitch, you cannot be a passenger, or you hit a very, very, very low ceiling, which is what we continuously do. Our only consistency is inconsistency because of it, right? You look at these other teams that I referenced, right? So Liverpool, Manchester City. If you want to go down the league a bit, people who I think are punching above their weight. So the likes of West Ham, Leicester a few years ago when Ndidi was at the top of his game. If you look, these guys were staple in their team. Other things might change around them depending on the opposition, or maybe Yuri Tillemans can't handle this game, or maybe Pablo Fornals can't quite get into this game, or Antonio. But Rodri, Fabinho, Rice, Ndidi, when he was, like I said, top of his game, they were always in there the same way Matic was always in there for us, or Makelele or Mikel, because they were the facilitators. You did not have to worry about them. They were the ones who would be like, you'll be all right, I've got... But imagine that flipped on its head and inverted. That's what Chelsea are like now, right? And it has been for the last 4 years. And it's why we go into the game like tomorrow and we worry about the likes of Jorginho in there. Is he able to cope? You wind back the clock, we never would have had to worry about the likes of Matic or Makelele or Mikel. That was never an area of concern.
Yeah, Mikel, you remember Mikel had that, that thing where anytime that you saw his number on the touchline, you already knew that we're not conceding nothing.
Game over.
Yeah, game over. And it's like, do you know what? I know it's not anything relevant to do with the conversation, but it's kind of ironic because he was actually the polar opposite of what he became. Because I remember him at Nigeria at a young age, he was playing as a cam. Yeah. And then Mourinho had the vision and said, nah, you're going to have to go back to the CDM position. And what a decision that was, man. Definitely. And I've heard you say several times that if Mikel was in this team, he'd be our best player.
He'd be our best player. Hands down. I mean, like you said, he was essentially, at the beginning, he was like Makelele's understudy, wasn't he? He was like, yeah. And then obviously Essien came in and he would, But, yeah, I mean, if he was in this team, like I say, in his prime or even just past it, he would be our best player. And he would be the one that would play all the time. Because those players, you don't have to worry about them. There's a reason they always play. It's like, I say it like it's an extension of the defence.
Yeah.
You want tall, athletic, strong centre-backs, right? To say that you don't want that in this position, to me, maybe it's my age, is crazy to me. Because you're winning half the battle when you do that. You can concentrate on all the other things, right? Imagine, the hot topic is always people talking about attacking players for Chelsea, right? Because they're the sexy things, the things that the front men, the leaders.
It's the most commercial positions on the pitch, exactly. The goal scorers and the assisters and all that. Yeah.
Imagine if we could talk about all of these things like I used to all the time, and we didn't have to worry about the things that we were worried about. I never had to worry about this sort of stuff with Chelsea, ever. The one thing I
what we were built on.
Yeah, the one word I describe us in the last not 10 years, the last 4 to 5 years is probably soft. We were never soft. We're soft.
Yeah, that much I can agree. We had some of the hardest bastards that you could ever think of in that Chelsea midfield, man. Just thinking of, your Obi Mikels, your Makeleles, your Essiens, your Michael Ballack's, even your Ramirez's, and not even just from a physical standpoint. Up here, some of the mental strength I've never ever, I haven't seen it in football for a long time. That Chelsea team, I could honestly say that era that we had was some of the most mentally strong characters I've ever seen in the game as a
All-time
collective.
great.
Yeah, as a collective, I've never seen anything like it. And it does feel at times like we are the polar opposite. And one example that springs to mind is nowadays, when we go 1-0 down, it can go really left. We can see once, sometimes the floodgates just open. And back then it was like you had your spine, you had your Peter Cech, your John Terry, your Obi Mikel, your Lampard, your Drogba that would say, lads, wake the fuck up. We are 1-0 down here with Chelsea Football Club. What's going on here? Yeah. Over here, right about now, if Jorginho's got that armband, or even Azpilicueta's got that armband, you look at your man in the time of adversity, what do you see?
Exactly.
And there's no answers. It's just, okay, well, it looks like we've got, I don't know, 60, 50 minutes left of the game. We're just going to have to weather the storm, which was never, ever the case.
No. But they would rely on, like I said, a moment. And they used to be with Chelsea, and I haven't felt this in at least 5 years, where we'd have this sort of air of like inevitability about us. But yeah. I don't sense that at all anymore.
Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's been gone. It's been gone. And I want to refer to a manager who, poor guy. I mean, he did his best, and I do feel he done an all right job considering the lack of experience that he had. Frank Lampard. Now, I know he did a lot of things wrong, and some things, he did, and I was just like, what's going on here? But I have to say, the man had a vision, because one of the things that he wanted to do in terms of recruitment is, like, ironically, he wanted to bring in Cucurella when he was worth 25 M's. And we've paid, and not that it's neither here nor there, but we've signed a player now. But the guy was banging on about Declan Rice. I want Declan Rice. Need Declan Rice. Why do we need Declan Rice? There's no grit in this midfield. There's a mentality issue in this midfield. We need this profile of player. They didn't want to hear it, but Lampard was right in terms of that, which makes me think, right? Is Lampard in the correct role? Should he really be a director of football rather than a manager?
100%.
You see?
So Lamps, he's obviously, I don't think he's the greatest coach for certain things. I wonder how long it will last for him at Everton. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. But one thing he does know how to do is how to build a Premier League winning side, or the attributes that are needed to build a side that is capable of winning the Premier League, because he knows that you need a spine. Again, Chelsea have not had a spine since we last won the title. Since that spine was dismantled, it's never been rebuilt, or a proper Premier League ready spine. He knew it's not, but it's ironic, but it's no surprise to me that the players that we should be, or most of the fan base know, are looking to upgrade on or move on, and the sort of players that we want to put in the place of them are exactly the same ones that Frank wanted to do in 2020. There's no surprise to me whatsoever there. But we're going the long way around it. Some of the things we're doing, we're falling upwards. But I wonder how long it will take for us to ever sort of get to where we need to be. That's the other thing that really concerns me. But I'm hoping that we get there eventually. And I am more optimistic about it under the new ownership than I was under the old one. Under the old one, I don't think we would have got there. Again, I think we could have there's more chance we would have ended up like Man United are than, say, I don't know, Liverpool.
I agree. I 100% agree now. And I have said this several times before, is in the manner of which the club was taken away from Roman Abramovich, because let's have it right, that's what happened. I don't agree with that necessarily. However, do I think it was the right time for us to part ways with the owner? Although we can still be thankful for everything that he did. Absolutely. Because the way that structure was from I was going to say Peter Kenyon, but he left. What a man Peter Kenyon was as well, by the way, people. Bruce Buck, he had to go. Marina Granovskaya. And this is the thing, is like, I want to be careful on putting too much blame on her, because first of all, she's not a football person. She shouldn't have been there to be, facilitating some of these deals. It was just the nature of what she had to do. The amount of responsibility that was given to her was way too much, in my opinion, way too much, in terms of, dealing with negotiations, having the power to either veto or say or accept a player coming in, then having to deal with the whole Westview thing. She had so many things. So it was a bit of a scattergun approach, even from her at times. Do you know what I mean? In terms of having to balance so many things. So the fact that these guys had to go, it's a good thing. Now that Todd Bowley's come in, I want to say this. I believe that the man has a vision, 100%. I do believe he's got a vision. And as we've seen, one of the first things that he did allude to is that the fact that he wants to get a director of football. Now, one thing I do like, but it's kind of risky, is the fact that he has the ideal targets in his mind. And I don't think he's going to settle outside of the two, which to me is Michael Edwards and Paul Mitchell. So for me, I'm happy for him to wait. But in that time, right, while they are not there, fans, you have to understand that the responsibility now lies with Thomas Tuchel. He has been given full responsibility and full trust in terms of the players that he wants to bring into the club, which is why I'm coming on to this subject. Thomas Tuchel needs to be held accountable for not recognizing this deficiency in our squad if it is not addressed by the time this transfer window is closed. Is this me saying that the manager should be fired? No, it's not. But it's me fairly criticizing the manager on what I feel is a glaring error since he has been given the responsibility by an owner. Because there's this crazy misconception, Mike, that Todd Bowley's going out there and picking the targets for him. How does that make any sense when he's coming from a baseball background? MLB background. How does it make sense if you listen to some of the stuff that Todd Bowley has said about the manager, right? If you've been reading about it, you will know that Todd Bowley has said, this is the guy that I'm going to trust. He has earned his trust. The way he has dealt with the situation through the pandemic, through the sanctions and stuff, he has earned this, winning the Champions League or whatever. Whether me or you agree with it or not is a different situation. But I do feel, in my opinion, that he does deserve that element of trust, considering everything that he has been through. But now it's time to repay that faith. You see what I mean? So now I've got to ask this question. If Thomas Tuchel feels that this is not an area that needs addressing, and we finish outside of the top four, do you think that's grounds for him to be fired?
Yes, because the way I understand it is, from their point of view, top four is an absolute minimum. Now, you've seen the amount of money that they're spending. They're going to, by the end of the window, they're probably going to eclipse any amount of money that the old regime spent in one window. And you've got to remember, most of this money, we've not really sold many players this summer. Like the window where we spent, 250 odd million in 2020, we remember we sold Hazard the season before, and we couldn't spend any of it, right?
Yeah.
So there's not even that in there, right? And I know each year prices go up, but inflation, 50 million now would have been like 20 million back then.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? Even like 4 or 5 years ago. But they will want return. They will want to see improvement. There has to be some sort of trajectory. They have to see it, right? They're not expecting everything to be like amazingly perfect and we're winning 4-0 every single game, 10 points clear at the top and all of this. But if the dog shit football continues, like we saw towards the back end of last season, where if you want to use some excuses and stuff and you want to say some stuff is the reason why, that's fair enough. I understand some people's views on it, and to a degree I sort of agree. I think it's overblown a little bit. Put it this way, I think Thomas Tuchel was very lucky the season ended when it did. But they don't want to see where we only win 8 games at home anymore. They don't want to see us this sort of knocking it side to side while the whole crowd is getting frustrated because we're not moving the ball forwards. Like there's no one attacking the box. There's players, there's 3 attacking players in the final third, and that's it. One's in the middle, one's all the way over there, one's all the way over there. It's surrounded by like 4 or 5 defenders. This stuff will apply. Top 4, if he gets it on that basis, and that's still happening, he'll probably be fine in the job, but it won't be all sunshines and rainbows. There will be like, okay, you better not slip up anymore now because we've given you all of this. The thing is, yes, this team needs a rebuild. Yes, the squad is poor, but 2 things can be true at once, right? everyone's like, yeah, but he has to deal with, a couple of centre-backs are leaving. He has to replace them. Fine. But if you told me going into this summer that all we can get is a couple of centre-backs and that's it, then I would agree with you and be like, fair enough. But that's not the case at all. You're seeing it with your own eyes. He is able to address things accordingly. And people think like, we can only do so much, blah, blah, blah. But he makes things abundantly clear to the ownership because they are backing him 100% and his vision that they're backing 100%. They will do everything in their power to make sure that those things can move into place. So if he doesn't want X player in the squad or Y player in the squad, and he says they've got to move out because I want to reshape this or whatever, they will do what they can to do it. You saw it with Lukaku, you saw it with Timo Werner. You're seeing it with the amount of money they're looking to put up. Because if you look, in most of the deals, even the ones that we haven't got over the line, the money is never the issue. Mm-hmm. The fees are agreed with the clubs. It's just that the player decides to go elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? With a lot of these deals, even the ones that we've done, a lot of the money is paid up front, which is rare in a lot of transfers. Where, say, a player costs 50 million, a club might only pay up front half of it or a third of it, and the rest is in instalments. I think Arsenal are still paying for Pepe, I think. But take Koulibaly, for example. We paid most of that up front. Rafinha, I know it never went through. We paid 80, 90% of that up front to Leeds. You saw Fabrizio, he tweeted in one go, boom, it's done between clubs. It's done.
Yeah.
So that's not the issue. They are backing him to the hilt. There's nowhere too high. If he thinks he can go into the season, right, with this roster of midfielders, and he thinks that they're enough, even when they're all fit, then fine. Not even taking into account the injury record of some of these players. Like you've seen, Kovacic, not available for tomorrow. Am I surprised? Sunday. Am I surprised?
No.
Not really. Injury prone. Kante, his hamstrings. He can't play more than once a week, and those games are going to be coming. At the moment, we're playing one a week. But as the season comes on, we're going to be playing twice a week, over and over and over again because of the World Cup. And then you've got Jorginho. You know my thoughts on him. I've been over that. Lots of people who listen to me or whatever, they know what I think of it. And then after that, right? So even in match, you'll see it on Sunday when Kante has to come off after the 70th because he's blowing, or Jorginho has to come off because he's struggling, or he's injured, or he's tired. You get down to the likes of Loftus-Cheek and Conor Gallagher, who should under no circumstances be considered in that pivot, especially without a defensive midfielder. Especially if you had a defensive midfielder, you could maybe somewhat negate, but we don't have one, as discussed. Yeah. If he thinks that what I've just said, right, because that's essentially the pool in there, right? If he thinks that is adequate enough for the season that we're about to have with all the congestion of games, the amount of competitions that we play, and he thinks that we can compete how the owners want us to compete on all fronts, it's not just like get top four, that's it. They want they want competition in everything. If he thinks that's adequate, then fine, go and show me. But he can't. There's no excuses. None.
After with the with the trust that he's been given, I can't disagree with that at all. Now, just before we finish up, I wanted to discuss options, not necessarily at Chelsea Football Club, although it can be argued. I've seen some say, what about Nathan Ampadu? What's the brother's first name? Ethan Ampadu. What about Billy Gilmore? Why are we not using these guys? Now, do you think, I'm not saying they're the answer, but do you think they are a better fit to what we currently have starting in Jorginho?
Oh, yeah. So, it's not. This is literally going to be hypothetical because the guy's going to go some way or another. Or even if he hangs around because something doesn't happen last minute and he's given a last minute shirt number, Thomas Tuchel will use him sparingly and he won't even use him in midfield. But hypothetically speaking, Ethan Ampadu is way more of a fit stylistically, attribute-wise, and talk about like a square peg in a square hole than any of the others. Well, not any of the others, but especially for that holding role in the pivot, if you like, the double pivot. He would, is he ready? Is he up to the standard of where we want to be at the moment? Probably not. There's no slight on him. But in terms of what's available in front of us, absolutely. He much more fits the mould of what I've been trying to say. right? Maybe just on a much lesser level, but that's the negligence that we have shown as a club over the years, or the manager is showing, that we don't have that other option. So yes, you would see, if I knew tomorrow that Ethan Ampadu was starting instead of Jorginho in there, would I feel confident, suddenly like 100% confident? No. But would I feel more secure? Probably yes. Billy Gilmore, as well, you mentioned him. The thing with Billy, defensively, he's not good. Defensively, he's not good, but he's another one of those other guys in the pivot that you partner with the defensive one, right?
Yeah.
He's still more of a fit, right, than someone like Conor Gallagher. It is beyond belief that he is considering playing Gallagher in there. It's so detrimental to not only the player, but to Chelsea. Because when the player is struggling in there, in such an important area of the pitch, Chelsea will struggle.
Mm-hmm.
He's at a point in his career, delicate point in his career, where any kind of misuse, it can fall off a ledge. He could easily become Ruben Loftus-Cheek, just in limbo, right? You saw at Palace why he was so good. It's not being caged to a pivot. I know he played in a three-man midfield, but if you want to look at that, he was the more attacking free option.
Yeah, because he was allowed to. Yeah, he was facilitated for.
Mm-hmm. He can't do that here. If he does that here, and even if he goes bombing forward into the box, fine. Who's covering the defensive space? Jorginho? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Kovacic, when he's not injured, I mean, not to the level that is required, because that's not his game. He's someone that should be not bombing into the box, but being allowed to be free, shuttling from side to side to find the passing lanes, right? He's a middle third type player. There's no one in this squad who is able to basically negate the space that's left open by all of these things that I'm talking about. These are all weapons that you should be using within the machine that you have, but there's a big fucking cog that's missing to enable you to do all this stuff.
No, facts. And so we're gonna move on to alternatives that are not at the club. Now, William Gallas said something yesterday or the day before that to me resounded with me massively. Mm-hmm. He said Frankie de Jong is a world-class player, but not quite the profile that Chelsea needs. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. He said Chelsea should be looking at a Casemiro / who was the other player? It was another player, that Rodri type of player. He could not have been spot on. Now, obviously, Rodri's at Manchester City. There's no chance on this green earth that they are going to let him go. It would baffle me if they did. Casemiro might be more attainable, but I still think he stays at Real Madrid. I still think they recognize his importance in that team. You don't stay in Real Madrid that long if you've got no use to the team. Let's have it right. So I do believe they value the player. And so what other options are there? There is the obvious one in Declan Rice, who surprisingly to me is dividing the fan base in terms of opinion. Some people can't understand why he would fit in this team and think he's a bang average player. Others, such as myself, I am crying out for such a player in this team. And I do think that by bringing him in, he will be able to, make us tactically have more options, So we're not going to look as shambles in a back four if we've got him at the base of the midfield. If you want to play him in the pivot, you can do so. It's these little things there. But outside the obvious of Declan Rice, what other players are out there do you think would fit the mold perfectly for Chelsea?
So are you talking about, say, like next summer, like going forward, rather than, because
even what's available now to buy, because I'd want to dispel this myth that there's nobody out there when to me there is.
Yeah. So right now, because we've let so many ample candidates go. It could have been easily obtainable. I've said this before, and not a lot of people like it. If Thomas Tuchel wasn't our manager last summer, Tchouaméni would have been a Chelsea player. But that aside, right, the one that sticks out to me right now, in the last weeks of this window, it's not going to happen, but would be the guy from Gladbach, which is Kone. I think.
Yeah, Kawadio Kone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a fantastic player. I was a big advocate for Sangare. He's just signed a new contract. So obviously, players sign new contracts and then people go and buy them afterwards. I mean, we're seeing it with Wesley Fofana. We're trying that. It just means that the price goes from, I think he had a 30 million Euro release clause. I think that's what it was for Sangare. So now,
yeah, it was 40 mil. I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. That's probably gone now. So they're going to ask for like 60 or so, like, you know, which is fair enough. Like, clubs didn't take the hit. But in terms of like longer term, so even like next summer, I mean, Declan's the obvious one, but there's a lot of people in the fan base, and the ones that want him, because the ones who don't, I don't really pay much attention. I don't really understand why. I mean, they're doing it because I think what they've done is they've gone down such a heavy agenda-driven rabbit hole. This guy could shit gold, and they would still say he's not good enough, right? Because, and I'm serious, because like there's not much more he can do. Like West Ham are not a great team. They shouldn't be whereabouts they are. The only reason they are there is because of him. If he leaves, right, and they don't buy an ample replacement, or even if they do, they will not be where they are in the league. They will fall down. They won't get relegated, but they will fall back down where they belong. They know that club know. This is why they won't entertain any bids for him this summer. They know that he pushes them above their weight. He's the one that gets them into Europe. He's the one who gets them that European revenue, right? He's the one who puts them on the map, essentially, if you like, challenges the likes of upcoming teams like Newcastle, challenges the Leicesters, the Wolves, even Man United, Arsenal, us, if we're not careful, right? He's the one who does that for them. He's way too valuable for them, yeah? They will make it even next summer. People think that he'll suddenly be available for like 60 million next summer. No chance. They will still want top dollar for him, right? And out of all the teams that will potentially be in for him, they will make it so hard for us. I don't think people realise this. It's so difficult. Even if they allow him to leave, should we say. Us, and maybe the only other team I can think of is maybe Tottenham, even though Tottenham won't be in for him. They would make the hardest for in the league. They would rather sell to the Manchester teams several times over than sell him to Chelsea. What happened the last time they let their midfield wonder kid star boy go to Chelsea? He became their greatest ever, our greatest ever player. Like, it's so coveted over as well. Like, their fans won't be happy about it. Like, it's going to be, it'll be a saga. It will be. You know, it has been for years, but it will be, when it finally comes to a head, it will be ridiculous. But, you know, but besides him, I love, and I was an advocate for him. You know, I'm slap in the face for me. The guy, I mentioned it before, the guy at Fulham, I think he's a brilliant player. He is he's a Premier League ready sort of player. When I was watching him the other day, I know there's a thing in football, sample size, I preach it, and I'm sure there'll be games where Fulham lose games, and there'll be games when they look shit, and even periods when they look shit. But just watching him the other day, because I know about the player and I've watched him a few times, it's all about Matic. He reminded me of 2014 Matic when I was watching him play around that Liverpool side. One touch football. He was bullying him. I thought he was fantastic. The fact they got him for 18 million as well is just unbelievable.
This is still,
unbelievable. And like, you know, he could be the difference of them staying up. I'm not saying they will, but he could literally be the difference. If they do stay up, I don't know how much they want to sell him for. 30, 40 maybe. I don't know. You don't know what sort of season he's going to have. If he's in, you know, injury, he would be someone I'd look at. I'm a big fan. Chelsea would never look at him because he's not like high profile enough. But I'm a big fan of the guy who does it for them at Brentford. I think it's Norgard. I think he's another solid one who sits in there. So there are players in and around there. You know, I can name more, but a lot of people will just go, "Oh, that's not a big name. That's not a big sexy name." You know, I mean, I could sit here and name people like Joshua Kimmich, but it'd be impossible to get someone like Joshua Kimmich.
Yeah, they're not going to want to sell him. Absolutely not. Yeah, that's a generational type of player. Of course,
the guy who's just gone to Crystal Palace, Decore.
The Sheikh Decore. My goodness me. Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is what I mean. We missed the trick with that one. And I think we was just linked with him for like a short period of time or something. Yeah. And I was at that point, I thought, okay, cool. But again, I agree with you on that one. We're gonna regret not going in for that one, 100%. But Kwadio Kone is somebody that you actually brought to my attention, and one of my other friends did. And I don't like to go with YouTube compilations because you can manipulate those in terms of you can put in your best, you know, compilations and make the player look like a prime Makelele or whatever.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that you cannot that are obviously true when you look at a compilation, regardless of what's there. One of them is the technical ability. Yeah, the way this guy is comfortable on the ball, his touch, the press resistance that you're consistently seeing from this guy, his ability to control the game, his ability to win the ball high up the pitch as well, and his ability to create. He is like, honestly speaking, Chouameni, I love this guy. I absolutely loved him, and I was crying out for him.
Yeah,
It broke my heart when he went to Real Madrid, and I thought we were not going to get another midfielder out there who's going to come close to that talent. When I saw the ability of this Kone guy, I thought maybe this guy could actually be it. It could be it. Having him or someone like that at the base of that midfield is absolutely revolutionary.
yeah.
But right now, it is a bit of a pipe dream. I'm not gonna lie. But I did hear rumors that Thomas Tuchel is going with this notion of if it's not Declan Rice, it's going to be nobody. And I'm not a fan of that. I'm absolutely not a fan of that. And especially at the reasons being that Jorginho's got 1 year left on his contract and it looks like he's not going to renew. And N'Golo Kante, same situation. So we're about to lose two midfielders anyway, right? And two midfielders that need to be replaced. At least bring in one this summer, that is going to facilitate for the transition when one of them goes. And then if you want to bring one in next summer, being Declan Rice or whoever it is, then do so. But I just don't feel that we should be in a position where both of their contracts are going to be run down, or Jorginho leaves and, a third or fourth choice steps in that we didn't think about using in the first place. But in terms of the Declan Rice situation, how true is that?
So, yeah, I mean, he loves him. I mean, most managers do. There's this misconception out there that these managers don't like him. They love him. There was multiple inquiries for him this summer. There's been multiple inquiries for him in summers past, not just from Chelsea, from lots of clubs, but they just don't entertain it. You don't hear about it. You just don't entertain it. I don't know if you listened to Matt Law the other day on the podcast on London is Blue, and he mentioned, like, I'm not going to name names because there was a few where they tried to speak to a few people about stuff, and he was absolutely one of them. I know he was, but Karen Brady just turned around and said, no, we're not entertaining it because of literally what I said. He's too important to them. He's someone that they don't want to sell. Like I was talking to you before we were on air about, like, guitars and stuff, right?
Yeah.
If I've got a guitar that I don't want to sell, I'm not going to entertain it. You'd have to literally give me something that's just ridiculous, that's basically impossible.
Unrealistic.
When I say impossible, I mean like 150, 60 million, like, up front. It's just never going to happen. Like, not right now in football. Like,
it's
maybe in like 10 years' time, maybe, if football carries on the way it's going. But then when it gets to that point, the player in question then will go, well, give us 250 million then. Do you know what I mean? So it will move. But, like, yeah, I mean, he doesn't want him, but I just think that it's such a dangerous game because it's not like, and not to always hark back to it, it's not like when we bought Matic in the January in 2014 and we had Mikel, so it was okay. We could carry on. We had a solid base. We had Mikel and like Ramirez, and I think Lamps was still there. He was on his last legs, but he was still there. But obviously, like I said, we had Mikel, so that type of profile. And it wasn't like we were desperate, right? But we got him in because Mourinho wanted to upgrade that area, so he wanted to get someone in. So we got him in, and obviously went to a new level. We aren't even in a situation where we have a aging Mikel. We don't have anyone. That's literally, like, we were sitting here a minute ago talking about, would Ethan Ampadu do a job there? Like, that's the position that we're in, and this is Chelsea Football Club. Chelsea Football Club. And the players that we spoke about that we had in it, we never would have had to have this conversation. To basically just keep going until it's like, oh, he might be available next summer. It's ridiculous. Like, last season, right? We sat here, so the transfer window just closed, or even all the way through the season, and we were like, yeah, Koundé's coming in. That's going to happen. That's the first thing. Nothing in football is a foregone conclusion. Nothing is. You can't, especially in football, live like that. Because say we think like, cool, we're not just going to do anything. We're just going to suffer for a year because Declan Rice may be available next year, even though it's going to be tooth and nail to try and get him. And then Man United come in and swoop in with a massive offer and take him like that. What good would that have done?
Yeah, facts. It's a fact. I agree with you, Mike. But listen, it has come up to the hour mark, and I do definitely want to invite you on the channel again, because I know that the comment section in this is going to be talking about, well, what about the attack? What about the finishing capabilities of the attack? You're not mentioning the attack. The attack's crap. Right? You know how all that goes. So I do want to come back and revisit the attack a bit more, but today was mainly focused on that role, like defensive midfield role. And I hope to the people that were watching that because I felt the way Mike explained it, I felt was absolutely brilliant. It was clear as crystal to me. So I hope you guys got a bit more of an understanding about the DM role and the importance of it, especially in this Chelsea team, and recognizing the lack of in this squad and what it may actually cost us long term. What it has cost us potentially in the past 5 years, quite rightly, like you said, since we've lost Nemanja Matic. So hopefully that brings a little bit more understanding. But Mike, where can the people find you if they want to learn more about your way of thinking in terms of football? Because I'll tell you something, people. Mike is somebody who his opinion, I respect it a lot, and he has opened my eyes to several things from a tactical perspective. He is a very knowledgeable person on football. Obviously, the channel is called Man Knows Football. I don't claim to know it all. You get me? Nobody claims to know it all, but it's an each one teach one kind of place. So I'm not ashamed to say where I can learn from you or you can learn from me. That's how I am. Do you know what I mean? So people, I would highly advise that you give Mike a follow, but let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so just follow me on Twitter. It's at green_3101. I think my DMs are open. Just message me if you want to ask anything at all. I'll reply. I mean, I host spaces quite a lot. They're a bit sporadic because I can't always have a designated time when I have them.
Yeah.
Just jump in, request to speak. I'll try and get you in if you want to chat about stuff. I'm always open for just nice, decent discourse with football debates.
I've got to participate more. I do, because I do tune into your spaces. But you see, when I tune into, and this is to everybody whose spaces I tune in, because I know you guys see me in there and I don't request to speak. To everybody where you see me in your spaces, the reason why I don't request is because I am with my kids by myself through Monday to Friday, because their mum works from outside home. I'm the one that works inside home. So therefore, I naturally am with the kids a lot more. So it's hard for me to be able to sit down in times like this, where I can actually have a solid conversation on a consistent basis, quite similar to you, Mike. So I have to manage my time a bit more. But there might be times where I will come up and I will request to speak and things like that. And similar to you, Mike, I will definitely try and give some ideas and, have a bit of a conversation with you on this spaces. So it's not a case where I don't want to speak. It's just that I'm multitasking at the same time. And I want to respect the host. I want to respect the space and give them my full attention. Do you know what I mean? So, in terms of Mike's details, actually, I didn't even know why I didn't think of it, because the article that we are talking about is going to be down there in the description. Like I said, clickable link. I will definitely put his socials down there as well. And as for me and Man Knows Football, you already know, same thing down there in the description. If you are new to this channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button, smash the like button as well. Leave your thoughts down there in the comments so we can see what you think. I always go through your comments. Sometimes I may take a while to respond, but trust me, I do read them. But people, big up yourselves wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Please make sure you do stay safe. Up the Chelsea. Bless up, people.